We are going to be kicking off our data course session, and to introduce our speakers today, I would like to bring up the current chair of the data course steering committee, Dr. Sheng Lu from UNC Duke ADRC.
Hi, welcome. So today we are going to have 5 speakers. So we'll have a Q&A section at the end. So for the first speaker, I'm glad to have Dr. Lee-Sen Wang. So Dr. Wang is the PI of the National Institute of Aging, Genetic of Alzheimer's Disease Data Storing Site. He's going to talk about NIGRAD. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So I'm so glad to have this chance to talk a little bit more about what NIGRAD does, especially focusing on the technical aspects of data access. So I'll be really brief. And some slides you saw yesterday, if you're at the director's session, we have just made 1 release of additional files annotating, adding values, and we have 2 more releases, additional genomes and additional phenotypes. This will bring the number of genomes to be about 60,000, and we're working. Our team's working really hard to get it out next month. And there are additional harmonized clinical phenotypes that is going to add great value to to all these resources. And we continue to generate SNP array data. All the ADGC genotype data for ADRCs are available on NIGRAD, and you can use 1 data access request to request all these data together with the sequencing data, and we're depositing additional GWAS data that have harmonized clinical phenotypes, so you can look at all these data together. Now, I'd like to talk about some of the, I think, more technical sides about how to get this data useful, valuable, accessible for researchers. And I hope that helps you understand and can tell us what are the things you need. And some of these are actually coming from our experience working with the AI Machine Learning Consortium that's in ADSP. The project has 9 funded grants, and they're looking at integration of different kinds of data. In addition to genomics, they have imaging, they have clinical phenotypes, gene expression, omics data, and you can see it's a big challenge. There's a great variety in the way they use these data. So one of the things that you're talking about is how to make these data more readily available for the methodology. They call it AI ready, machine learning ready. So the question is, what makes data AI machine learning ready? And people have different views. So my view is actually looking at from the other direction. What are the issues with how you organize your data, make it available? If you're not doing these steps, that will make it easy, difficult for AI machine to use. So I came up with actually four ideas. I'm sure there are other things that need to be done, and I'd like to hear if you have any suggestions and comments. The first is you need to make sure when you integrate these kind of data sets, they are interoperable. So if it's genomic data, they're lined up to the same genome build, and they have the same gene models, annotation, and so on. So you need to do these things at the beginning, make sure that all the data are processed consistently. And then you need to make sure these files are readily available for analysis or access by the software. So how do you make sure the data are properly formatted? In this case, following industry standards is very, very useful. Developing platforms such as APIs that your program can access the data will also help integrating your data with their analysis pipelines. The other thing is actually less obvious. Data heterogeneity, different cohorts have different way of how subject recruited. Well, in this case, UDS is very, very important because it tries to harmonize all the data, make it easier. You avoid batch effects. And there are many, many other cohorts in the ADSP. So you need to make sure all these information are available and look at the data very, very carefully. And sometimes you need to do statistical transformation of data. Say, different studies have different ways of collecting cognitive data. And finally, even if all these are fine, you have different studies combined together, you could have imbalance. Say some studies have, they're older, but they have more control cases, and then you combine these together, you're gonna have confounding. So that's a case where you need people who analyze the data, talk with people who understand how these studies are generated, talk with Alzheimer's researchers. So these are the challenges we're working with the researchers to address these issues. But I think this is the way we're thinking about data, and we'd like to hear if you have any advice for these. So there's some tools that we do to make it easier to accessible. Certainly, we define the data standards at the beginning when we process data. This is the FUNGEN consortium I talked about yesterday. They have different kind of functional genomics, activities, and annotations. We want to make sure that all data are processed consistently, have the same genome build, have the same gene labels, and all the files have the same way of recording the effect size and so on. We also have platforms for people to access all these analysis results. So especially if you want to analyze lots of data together, it's better to just query these data directly from platforms instead of downloading lots of files. And you want to have tools that you can visualize and look at the results. We have I mentioned yesterday, we have a genomics database that you can go there and search the genes and variants. And it comes with a visualization tool that you can stack different annotations, see if there are particular regions that are of particular interest. And we develop a data access API that you can write programming queries to just integrate that with your workflow. And the output is the standard JSON format. If you're a programmer, you're a data scientist, you understand that's the standard format that you can directly integrate different kinds of data. And we're still testing it. If this is something that you want to use and you'd be glad to work with us, please let us know. We'd like to have more help about how to develop these things. One other issue, like there are these general principles that's really useful. If we follow them, it's easier for people to access data. In this case, the FAIR principle, I think you've heard about these in many occasions, and these are guidelines when we're talking about generating data for data sharing management, for example. And we have different efforts to make sure that the way we share data follows the FAIR principle. We have a data discovery platform. It's using the Gen 3 platform that if you also look at cancer data, that's the platform that the Cancer Genome Commons use. It's developed by University of Chicago, very, very powerful. We also have a data submission portal that if you are submitting data to NIGAS or sharing, it will automatically validate and point out if there are issues with the submission. So it saves your time from going back and forth. And now all the data on NIGAS data sharing service have a digital object identifier, DOI. That's a permanent unique ID. So you can cite these data records in any different situations. So I think these are things that will help you access, identify, and cite data objects. You saw this slides yesterday. Just reminds we have office hours, tutorials, and booths at AIC. We're going to do it again at the American Society of Human Genetics next month. And we'd like to hear from you. Thank you for if you have shown to our office hours. It's really very, very helpful for us when we get your feedback. And we have a booth at ASAG. If you're going to the event, hopefully we'll see you there. And again, we have the preprint that describes all these various resources. And also, I want to show this the last slide. I've talked with NACRAD, I've talked with NAC, and we think getting more input from the Alzheimer's Center is really going to help us do a better job. We want feedback, want to understand what the ways you access data is going to make it easier for you to use the data. So we're organizing a work group. It's still at a planning stage. We don't have anybody sign up yet. But if this is something that you're interested, please send either Sarah or me an email. You can find our email from just Google. And so I'm sorry I didn't include the email. But especially, we look forward to people who are using genetic data to work with us and tell us what to do. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Li-Shang. So our next speaker is Dr. Michael Lutz. Dr. Lutz is the professor in neurology at Duke University. He's also co-lead of data core of Duke UNC ADRC. So he's going to talk about data concierge, making center data findable, available, the ADRD research ecosystem.
Thank you, Sheng. I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to speak about the Data Concierge Project at the Duke University of North Carolina ADRC today. As an introduction to the Duke UNC ADRC, our theme is identifying age-related changes across the lifespan that mediate the development, progression, and experience of Alzheimer's disease. This goal involves many different types of data. Several important aspects of our center include a collection of a young cohort of individuals aged 25 to 44 years, in addition to the main UDS cohort. This allows investigators to address questions about early-stage disease. As for many centers, we are focusing recruitment efforts to assemble a diverse cohort that includes typically understudied populations. Our external advisory board challenged us to enable our data management systems to address the AD/ADRD ecosystem at Duke and UNC. The ecosystem is quite diverse, with each of the programs, labs, and studies both potential consumers of resources and providers of new data and resources. Some parts of the ecosystem predate the formation of the ADRC by decades, including the Brain Bank. Others are new programs, such as an ongoing collaboration with Dr. Robert Turner, who is now a new faculty member at Duke and a member of our outreach corps for the Black Men's Brain Health, Aging, and Alzheimer's Disease Project. The twin goals are to make it very straightforward for each part of the ecosystem to know what resources are available from the center, determine whether they align with study or program that they are working on, and provide back new data and resources to share. One of our center co-directors, Dr. Heather Whitson, constructed this diagram of the ecosystem. This is a 40,000-foot view of the ARENA data management system. ARENA is short for Alzheimer's Disease Relational and Integrated Data Set. Building on some of the fabled Duke-UNC basketball rivalry, we use sports-related acronyms and names for our data management systems centered around an arena. We have scoreboards, locker rooms, and gateways that are various interfaces with the data. The cores provide data that is aggregated in an Oracle database, enabling flexible queries, reporting, and management of data security. Imaging and biomarker data are indexed in this database with metadata. The central database is labeled Petagene Oracle, so while the platform is Oracle, the Petagene architecture structure builds in considerable institutional knowledge and multi-layered security levels, in addition to features that are designed for managing large databases of clinical, molecular, and biomarker data. The database structure allows a participant to belong to multiple groups and studies. This gives the flexibility to handle complex relationships between individuals and their participation in studies. Maybe a 4,000-foot view of the data systems to give you an idea of the various data interface mechanisms, including the REDCap API, linked servers, and extract, transform, and load from files. We do make extensive use of REDCap projects beyond the standard UDS forms, including our forms for the autopsy and brain donation program. Global App is an in-house developed system for participant tracking and scheduling that is used by our clinical and outreach corps. And there's a linked server interface so that demographic and participant information can be entered in one place and transmitted to other applications. The data concierge concept derived from the idea that the DMS core would have individuals who are familiar with the resources available from the center and knowledge of the AD/ADRD ecosystem. The role involves programming, website and user interface design, and one-on-one consulting with investigators interested in using center resources for their projects. On the right side of the slide, you see the mapping of requirements to specific software and processes, for example, determining if you can obtain the sample needed for a study. Conceptually, views of studies and data on the central website make the specific resources findable and accessible, with an acknowledgement that consultation with a core member may be needed for help with specific sample selection or identification of alternative resources that might include other public data sources, for example. One of the first deliverables from the Data Concierge project was to put together detailed descriptions of each resource, including data on the current composition of the resource, as seen on the right for cohort enrollment numbers. The same approach for generating these graphs is used for the ARENA Gateway Query Tool, which we'll cover in a minute. The various resources are organized into a resource library, with the analogy being that each resource is a book, and you can skim the table of contents and read the details. Detailed information on specific protocols is available, for example, for retinal imaging. The ARENA Gateway is the main interface to address the question of whether a resource fits the need of a potential project. This can be a grant, study, planned publication, or replication study, to test alignment with research questions, and to enable power calculations. Here, histograms are shown for age of enrollment, clinical diagnosis, sex, and type of MRI scan. Note the main panels of demographics, diagnosis, biomarkers, and biospecimens. For biospecimens, data is provided on sample amounts for biofluids and images. The gateway was developed by Sam Gaudet. The gateway features linked interactive graphics. Here, all of the distributions are shaded for ApoE34 participants. Clicking on a bar makes the selection in all the histograms. At the right and left side of the chart, you see the actual numbers. The light blue column is all of the samples. The darker blue is the selected criteria. The AT biomarkers are shown in the lower corner as well. Sliders and checkboxes allow building specific queries to construct a sample from the resource. Multiple criteria can be used in the query, and these link back to the graphics. Changing to a different data source is as simple as clicking on one dropdown. Here we switch to the biospecimens biobank as shown in the upper right. In this case, the main tabs of demographics, diagnosis, biomarkers, and biospecimens are still relevant. Although individual charts are different, here we see both CSF available and plasma available to help construct a physical sample request. Once an investigator has determined that it is likely that the center has a resource that they would like to request, they make the request. REDCap with survey options and extensive branching logic was used to develop the resource request system. You'll see from some of the screenshots that the system is designed so that most information can be entered once for multiple resources. Subsequent screens are enabled or hidden depending on the resources chosen. The first main branching point is Are You a Researcher?, which presents two very different sets of resources to choose from. Consultation is often requested as a resource, and this can be tailored to specific cores or left general. Letters of support, which are a very common request, are handled by the system with downloads of a template and uploads of the letter for signatures. The resource request system was developed by Colette Black. Project information is typical for what the investigator likely put together as a research proposal for a grant, summary, aims, analytical plan. We give the investigator the option to upload a file with information or to fill in text boxes. The project information helps the reviewer in each core evaluate the request. Sample requests tend to be more complex and require specification of both sample numbers and volumes. This information is organized in a table. If the investigator would like to consult with a statistician, it's as easy as clicking a box which sends an email of the request. Requests from the community are handled by the resource request system. These might involve presentations or participation at community events. This chart gives an overview of the entire resource request and review process from start to finish based on the various REDCap forms. After the request is made, emails to the core start the review process with a form for different resources: data, imaging data, samples, and consults. The review forms have several parts, including capturing the communication of the response to the requester, the decision, which can be approval or not, and for approvals, assignment to an individual in the appropriate core. For approved requests, the person assigned to fulfill the request receives an email and eventually fills in the details, for example, a specific data set identifier. Communication between the cores was also emphasized by our external advisory board. We're using dashboards such as this enrollment dashboard implemented in Tableau to facilitate communication between the cores and to enable report generation and for internal planning and management. Several different types of graphs are used. One strength of Tableau is the geographical map that shows enrollment by county. Tableau allows for numerous options in terms of query and reporting. This report is for one of the resources in the broader ADRD ecosystem, the Murdoch Memory and Health Study. This report combines tabular and several different types of graphical data. Similar to Gateway, sliders and dropdowns allow construction of a multi-part query. This slide covers some of the details of the Gateway query tool. Key components are JavaScript libraries and runtime environments. Foremost, chart.js is used to make the interactive graphics, and node.js is used to create the runtime environment for the back end of the query tool. This software is free, open source, and can be used to build a complex query and reporting system. However, there is a fair bit of custom JavaScript programming involved. The diagram also illustrates the communication with the databases via SQL queries for both Tableau and Gateway, and the REST API for communication between the Gateway front end and back end. This is one of the 400-foot level views comparing the report generation options. Tableau is the easier route to go for non-programmers. However, there is still a learning curve. Making new visualizations involves many mouse clicks, while in a programming environment, often editing a few lines of code can extend a report or a visualization. Tableau has costs in terms of institutional and developers' licenses. Programming offers far more control over report structure and interfaces, and as shown for the Gateway, it can be developed with free open source software. However, this requirement does require learning a programming environment and the database environment behind it. Some future plans: we plan to enable investigators to query completed resource requests to facilitate collaboration and resource reuse. So this is sort of the second parts of the FAIR principles. We are experimenting with automatic customization of data use agreements and MTAs from the information that investigators submit when they are requesting the resource. As seen in the ecosystem slide, there are many projects and initiatives that are generating new data using ADRC resources, and we plan to curate and provide linkages to these data. Here's the URL for our center website for you to see the system in action and to submit resource requests. Please feel free to contact me if you have questions or suggestions. Finally, I want to acknowledge the contributions of many to the Concierge project and to the development of our center's data management infrastructure and systems, starting with the ADRC's data management team, core leaders, and the executive team. Our external advisory board provided many helpful suggestions that guided the work I presented today. Many ADRCs were extremely helpful in developing our various data management systems, including the University of Kansas, Wake Forest, and University of Washington ADRCs. And two additions, I also wanted to thank David Bennett at Rush and Heather Allure at Yale for a lot of good advice when I started this job when our center was first formed. Finally, I want to acknowledge our funding from the P30 grant and from the Ruth K. Broad Foundation for the Data Concierge project. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lutz. So our next speaker is Dr. Gustavo Jimenez Maggiano. So Gustavo is the Director of Informatics at USC, University of Southern California, ATI, and lead of ACTC Informatics Unit. So he's going to talk us about novel approaches to sharing data and specimen in Alzheimer's disease clinical trials.
Thank you. So I wanted to start by thanking the meeting organizers for giving me the opportunity to present our approach to sharing data and resources for Alzheimer's disease clinical trials. I have no relevant disclosures. So for those of you who aren't familiar with ACTC, ACTC is the Alzheimer's Clinical Trials Consortium. It's an NIA-funded program led by Paul Azen at USC, Risa Sperling at Harvard, and Ron Peterson at the Mayo Clinic. Our goal is to accelerate ADRD clinical trials by establishing a standing trial infrastructure that includes 35 academic trial sites across the country, as well as expert-led committees and units. ACTC has a long-standing commitment to open science, which is aligned with the NIA expectations, as well as the principles of fair data and the collaboration for Alzheimer's prevention. To meet this commitment, we support broad and timely data and resource sharing that is designed to protect participant privacy as well as trial integrity. More specifically, ACTC shares not only de-identified data, but also software, instruments, anonymized biospecimens, expertise on trial design and documentation. And we share these resources at two critical time points in the trial lifecycle. The screening data for our trials is shared 1 year after the completion of enrollment, and the final study data set is shared 1 year after a trial completes and the primary results are reported. So to illustrate our approach, I'd like to share a brief case study on our efforts to share the A4 trial data set. A4 was a phase 3 RCT looking at preclinical AD designed to assess the efficacy and safety of solanezumab versus placebo. To enroll this study, we screened almost 7,000 participants between the ages of 65 and 85, and ultimately randomized a little bit more than 1,100 participants. These participants were followed longitudinally for 4.5 years, and interestingly, about 500 participants that failed due to non-elevated amyloid failed to enroll into the main trial were enrolled into the LEARN observational sister study. If you'd like more details on either of these studies, I invite you to access clinicaltrials.gov. And so again, consistent with our approach, we shared data for these studies at 2 stages. The first stage, which included all of the screening data, was shared at the end of 2018. And the final study data set, which included placebo and treatment arm data, was just recently shared a couple of months ago. These data included clinical, cognitive, lab, and biomarker data, as well as multimodal neuroimaging data and genetic data. So I'd like to share some of the results of the efforts to share this screening data. So stage 1. The panel on the top right plots the number of data requests that have been approved for the A4 screening data. And so I'm happy to report that as of early this month, we have approved almost 1,600 data sharing requests for the screening data. Of those, about 10% of the investigators have also downloaded the imaging data. And these investigators hail from more than 60 countries. I think most importantly, in terms of measuring the impact of this effort, about 73 publications have referenced the A4 pre-randomization data set. Now, while these efforts have been successful, we've also had a number of lessons learned. And so I want to share a few of those lessons as we go through the remainder of the slides. But just to begin, even though it's a year sounds like a long time to pre-process these data sets to be able to share, it actually isn't very long, given the fact that the data preparation process includes extensive activities related to de-identifying the data and refacing all of the imaging data. So a year goes by quite quickly. And so one of the lessons learned is that for newer trials, we have started to front load all of those pre-processing activities, even to the point of conducting those pre-processing activities concurrent with data capture, so that hopefully in the future, the data will be ready to share at a much earlier time point. So moving on to the results for our efforts to share the final data set. As I've noted, these data are available now for all of you to hopefully request access to and hopefully be able to incorporate into your research. These data are very significant in terms of their magnitude. Again, they contain more than 84,000 longitudinal participant visits, as well as more than 15,000 longitudinal imaging studies that include MRI, amyloid PET, and tau PET data. Another lesson learned is that we've noticed that different sub-communities within the overall research community tend to gravitate toward different data sharing platforms. And so in an effort to meet investigators where they are, we've actually opted for sharing the full final data set on multiple platforms. So we've shared data on the GRIP platform, which is a platform that we've co-developed with Gates Ventures. And you can find that platform at a4studydata.org. We've also tried to leverage the NIA's investments in data sharing by leveraging the Synapse platform, which we've noticed is a platform that the omics community is especially comfortable with. And so we've shared the A4 data on that platform. And we're working with Loni to share this data set via Loni and Gain, because we recognize that, especially for imagers, Loni and Gain tend to be their platform of preference. I'm happy to report that as of earlier this month, we already have more than 150 approved requests for these data across all 3 platforms from investigators from 18 countries. And again, to further document our learnings, we've also taken the opportunity to develop a manuscript which was part of an A4 special issue in the Journal of Prevention for Alzheimer's Disease. I invite everyone to access this QR code if you'd like to, again, submit a request for access to the full data set. So another lesson learned is that we've been thinking a lot about data usability, especially because, again, these data are very complex, and we recognize that especially for early career investigators, that there's a usability issue. So I wanted to share a couple of approaches that we've been developing to try to make the data more usable. The first approach is work that's being led by my colleague Mike Donahue and the ADRC Biostatistics Group, developing an R package that's included with the data to allow for more easy, more usable approach that allows investigators to replicate the results of the primary A4 analysis, as well as incorporates code and documentation to help investigators get familiar with the data sets and be able to replicate some of the results in the primary publication and some of the related publications. The second initiative is work that we've been doing with Gates Ventures to develop a chat-like interface that uses a large language model to allow investigators to use natural language prompts to explore the A4 data by simply submitting a natural language query. And so I just shared this brief video to illustrate how this kind of approach might work. Obviously, this is a very early prototype, so there's still quite a bit of work to do. But I think we are very excited to continue to work on this type of approach. We've seen that this approach can actually lead to kind of a good starting point for investigators that want to orient themselves to how the data is organized and how to develop some analysis around these data sets. And so again, what's interesting about this approach is that when the LLM responds, it responds with both code as well as the results of executing that code against the A4 data set. And so anyway, we're very interested in continuing to develop this approach. And I would be very interested if there are any of you who are interested in working with us to continue to develop this prototype. So then just to conclude with some next steps, first we plan to continue to develop our infrastructure to support precise requests for data and documentation and images and biospecimens. We have a lot of other data types that we are still working on being able to appropriately de-identify. And as one example, we have a very large audio data set, which we are collaborating with Gates as well as Rhoda Au to help us automate the de-identification of those data. And we hope to be able to share those data soon. We are also looking to continue to develop these different tools to facilitate analysis, quantification, and exploration of these data. And finally, we will continue to develop these AI-based data exploration tools. Secondly, we're very interested in making sure that our data sets can be connected with the broader ADRD data ecosystem. And so again, we've been working with Dr. Biber as well as others to ensure that our data platforms are interoperable with all of the other platforms that are being used for other cohorts. And finally, we're very interested in continuing to promote the secondary use of trial data and resources to drive precision medicine approaches to accelerate ADRD prevention and therapeutic development. So with that, I just wanted to acknowledge the A4 and Learn study participants, study partners, and their families. Obviously, all of our A4 and Learn study sites, and my collaborators at ATRI and ACTC. Thank you.
Thank you, Gustavo. Next, we are going to have two speakers. We have Dr. Tina Lewandowski and Dr. Jeffrey Burns. Tina is the Director of Engagement at the University of Kansas, ADRC, and a part of the ORCO. So Dr. Burns is the co-director of University of Kansas, ADRC, and the co-lead of the clinical course. So they are going to tell us about data support drives the outreach, recruitment, and engagement success. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, great. It's great to be here. Thank you to the Data Core Steering Committee for the invite to kind of show off our efforts to really use data to drive outreach and recruitment. And it is very much a grassroots effort that sort of has come about organically over time. And we've built a pretty nice system to drive recruitment and inform recruitment efforts. So I'm the clinical core lead and presenting on behalf of Eric Vidoni, who you see here. He's our core leader. And he's really the driving force behind all this, but he's unable to make it today. But Eric and I, about 10 years ago, committed to some sort of shifts in our thinking and committed to this effort to really prioritize recruitment and do it across the whole center. It's vital to the science. We all know if we can't recruit, we can't get our studies done. So it needs to be prioritized in a lot of different ways. We also need to recognize it has academic value. There's some science in it. Recruitment science is a thing and is very important. The other thing we committed to is really integrating everything we're doing. And this has been something we've done basically from the start, where we bring together all our efforts. So for example, we have 20 to 40 studies at any given time. All those studies are recruiting through and working with the ORCOR. And so the ORCOR is responsible predominantly for the recruitment and engagement of the community for all those different studies. That gives us a lot of advantages. So recruitment is complex, takes a lot of steps. There's a lot of sort of multi-tiered operation, so it requires a good data backbone and a way to organize all that data and move it from team member to team member and out to study groups as well. So there's always a need for reporting and a need for moving that data around. And then we committed to professionalizing what we do. So, and thinking about the customer. So the customer is the participants and underrepresented groups that we're trying to serve, but also the study teams. And so serving those study teams, in a way that sort of maximizes what they're doing and accelerates what they're doing is something we committed to. And it requires data to do that. So again, we're very centralized. Everything pretty much, as needed, runs through, not all, but runs through the OR core. And the OR core we broke it into 2 dedicated teams that do different things but work sort of synergistically. We have an engagement team that's responsible for getting the word out and building trust in the community and getting people to reach out to us, call us, show up to events, and build that trust to take the next step for this sort of subgroup of people that are interested in research, and that's where the recruitment team steps in. And when people reach out to us in various ways, the recruitment team's responsibility is then to fit them with the right studies. And to do that, again, requires a data system to support all that activity and the collection of data that happens. And so what we've built over the years is a customer relations management system. There are customer relation management systems you can pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for. We looked into those, but what we did was basically build our own within REDCap. Sort of the nucleus of that system is in REDCap. And this system, REDCap is that ecosystem, our whole ecosystem is built around REDCap, so it makes it a natural sort of extension of what we're doing and allows us to really fully align and stay aligned with the clinical teams that we're interacting with. We have a clinical research operations group, which runs a lot of the studies themselves for independent teams, but also independent teams that are running studies. And so all this sort of comes together in a way where we have, again, this ecosystem built around the database systems of REDCap, and allows us to take study participant information and interactions with those participants and move it around the different teams that are involved. And so that's my preface to this, and I'm going to turn it over to Tina Lewandowski, who's really the administrative director over the whole OR core.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about how data allows my team and I to do our jobs so much better than if we didn't have this data. So as Jeff talked to you, we really wanted to think about how we were going to use this data, what we were going to do with it, and who we needed to think about as far as experiences with this data. So we really wanted to focus on the study participant, and we wanted to think about customer service. How do we bring customer service into this, and how do we continue with that trust we started building as people move through the recruitment process? We wanted to think about our study teams and our PIs. What information do they need? What reports do they need? How are they going to use this? And then we also wanted to think about our own functional users. How can they do their jobs at a high level, very efficient? So you can see we needed to make sure we collected all that data and that it moved appropriately. So it looks like here are prompt data. So this ecosystem that we were talking about, it is really a registry. So we collect all of this information about a potential research participant, and we have it housed in this database. And then I can extract that information based off of study-specific inclusion and exclusion criteria to then go to a PI and say, I already have X amount of people that we've talked to that are interested in potentially participating in your study that meet your study criteria. We also have that CRM piece of it, so we're able to deliver that high level of customer service. We're able to take a look at recruitment of all of our studies and compare those and learn from them. We're also able to track our outreach efforts. So when we think about how to be strategic and efficient with our studies, we're able to check on those and to see if we are meeting those needs with the different engagement activities that we do. We're able to track our contacts with our participants and see how many times, how many touch points we have to make with participants to encourage them to enroll in a study. And then ultimately, we rely on a series of tools for reports. These next slides I'm going to show you are samples of reports that we provide. So it's not intended for you to be able to read all of the samples we have of these reports. So this first slide, we're able to take a look at those engagement efforts. So we looked at different activities that we do to promote studies. One activity that we did was a social media push. We had a study that needed more male participants. So we did a social media push, and we wanted to see, did that push that was focused solely on males work? So we ran data from August to beginning of October to see how many people came to us through social media that were male. So we had 116 people in that time period that came to us through social media. 3 of them were female. So we were pretty excited, like this is working. It helps us to be strategic with those decisions. But this allows us to go a level deeper. We're also able to see, of those 113, how many of them actually are going to enroll in the study. So then we can think about social media more holistically. Is this someplace we want to continue to put our resources and efforts in? Does it actually yield enrollments? Also, we can see where participants are coming from throughout our region, which helps us to decide where we want to put funds, if we want to do geofencing, et cetera. It's also really valuable for our investigators. So a lot of our investigators really like those P30, RPPR tables for reporting. They don't have to generate those later. We have those for them. This is a sample of a report that one of our PIs receives monthly. So they can see how many people we talk to, our recruitment team talks to, before we pass individuals off to them, so how many pass-offs their team gets, and how many enrollments then they have in their study. So from that, we can tell what is our pass-fail rate. And we can then use that to apply to how many people we need to enroll in the study. So then we can work with study teams to give them an exact number of how many potential pass-offs we need to give them each month so they can meet their enrollment goals. Data also allows us to monitor our overall studies, so we can prioritize which studies we need to focus on for our efforts. So the bar chart takes a look at how many people we've enrolled year over year. The Gantt chart takes a look at our timeline. So this is one that's really helpful for us when we are taking a look at which studies do we need to prioritize. So if we're maybe not meeting enrollment quite where we want to, then our entire team is going to focus on working towards that study and deploying more engagement efforts for that study or series of studies, which is really helpful when we're up at like the 40 end of studies. It's easier when we only have about 20, but when we start to get a lot of studies, this is really helpful. Also, we're able to monitor our team's activity and efficiency. So we require an expectation that 42% of our team's time a week is spent on the phone talking to participants. So each week we run those numbers and we see how many minutes people are spending on the phone talking to potential participants about studies. And then we talk about, why didn't we meet this week? Or maybe somebody was really high on their percentages. So it helps us to keep in touch with our team. And then it also helps us to see how many touch points we need to have with participants. So when we take a look at different groups, some groups require more touch points, and we were able to use this information to determine we need to have a few more touch points with certain groups than other groups. So the prompt system Dr. Fedoni has talked to a lot of other universities about this system to try to inspire them to have something similar. He's been in conversations with University of Washington, and they're working on a system as well. After this presentation, you'll hear from Vanderbilt about their pitch presentation, which I did see a little bit of their presentation earlier, and it looks like they have a participant dashboard. So I've been inspired to go back to my team and think about how can we make this a dashboard for participants? How can they see where they're at in the process? How can we deliver some resources to them as well? So not only have we inspired some other programs, in return, they're inspiring us to keep thinking about how we can enhance our prompt system. And then also, what would a central prompt system look like across all ADRCs? What would a clearinghouse look like? Could we really focus on recruitment science at that national level? So finally, data allows us to centralize our recruitment across all studies. So it's very effective for our participants. They contact us, we can offer all of our studies for them instead of collecting information for 40 different studies. We're also able to fill those studies very efficiently because we go to that registry and we start there. We're able to make data-driven decisions. We think about our engagement efforts and which ones are more effective. We've been able to streamline that communication between the OR and the study teams. So I meet with study teams every month to talk about their study and how we're doing. We've been able to enhance that customer service experience for the participants, and we provide the regular and accessible reporting. We've also been able to monetize our OR services. So for what we do for the studies, I'm able to invoice for that. It does not cover our entire team's cost, but we're able to generate some funds to help support us. And then we've been able to standardize our processes and functions. But ultimately, I would say what this has done for us is allowed us to have researchers research. So we do not expect researchers to be developing flyers. We do not expect researchers to be coming up with social media campaigns. That's what we do for them, so they can focus on their research, which is what's most important to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina and Jeff. So next we are going to have Dr. Tessie Fu. Dr. Fu is the Assistant Professor of Medicine in the Division of Epidemiology and lead of a Vanderbilt Exploratory ADRC ORCO. So she's going to talk to us about participant information tracking and coordinating hub page.
Hello, thanks everyone for being here, and thanks for this great opportunity. I'm super excited to share a little bit about pitch. Tina and Dr. Burns, Jeff Burns gave a great intro to kind of what we're trying to do with pitch. And this has been an awesome collaboration between our OR core and our data core led by Dr. Dan Liu, as well as inspired by and informed by KU's efforts. So the recent discovery of transformative disease-modifying treatments has really increased interest in Alzheimer's disease and related dementia research. But in the rush to enroll participants in these drug trials and in non-pharmaceutical trials and ongoing cohorts, often these studies lack adequate representation across socioeconomic, geographic, and racial ethnic lines, as well as language lines. So ADRD researchers, and particularly the recruitment teams, are really challenged with not only recruiting more diverse and representative samples, but also doing it as efficiently as possible with tight recruitment budgets. So the existing recruitment model that many of you are familiar with is this idea that the study teams are going to enroll participants from clinical enterprises, and they're going to partner that and pair that with community presentations to try to attract new participants. But we know that that existing recruitment model was inadequate before to meeting the increasing research needs, and we know it's going to fall only further behind in the future. So So keeping that in mind, as you saw, Kansas University developed a centralized data-driven model to accelerate clinical trial and research study recruitment. And you saw that, and I'll highlight again, some of the key elements of the KU model is the dedicated staff to handle research inquiries, the customer-oriented approach, the accessible intake of information for recruitment and study team members, and the regular and ongoing process evaluation of these recruitment efforts. And you saw that all these activities are really well supported and enhanced by their data backbone. So building on that model and recognizing that data-driven approaches are needed to better leverage not only staff resources, but also to ensure maximum return on investment of research funding, we sought to develop the Participant Information Tracking and Coordinating Hub, or PITCH. And the overall goal of PITCH is to support all of our ADRC outreach, recruitment, and engagement activities. PITCH was developed to help us to evaluate the effectiveness of our community engagement and recruitment strategies, to monitor participant progress through the entire enrollment pipeline from inquiry to study enrollment, and to support simultaneously enriching multiple ADRC studies at the same time. And we will hope to do this by offering a web platform for not only our teams to use, but for external study teams to use as well, allowing us to really centralize research recruitment for ADRC studies across, or ADRD studies across our institution. So PITCH was developed with a user-centered design. And if you're not familiar with what this is a design process where feedback from end users is iteratively incorporated into the platform development as well as platform updates. And for this project, end users were defined as local ADRD investigators and staff, users based at other ADRCs like all of you, and the broader ADRD research community. And each iteration of PITCH design involves 4 distinct phases: understanding the context of use, specifying user requirements, what do we want the platform to do, developing design solutions to meet these requirements, and then evaluating the design solutions as we develop them against these pre-specified requirements. So in the fall of 2021, our data management team performed the first 2 phases of design simultaneously by conducting listening sessions with pre-specified stakeholders. These stakeholders included ADRD investigators, our OR teams and staff, and clinic study staff. And from these listening sessions, we really were able to identify that we needed PITCH to be able to summarize eligible study participants, to capture outreach and engagement activities event statistics, to track participant recruitment and referral process. And to be able to do all of this, it needed to be done in real time and be dynamic to changing criteria that we entered, and to be able to be interactive and useful, again, not only to our team, but to external study investigators and their teams. And I wanted to highlight that these specified components are what really take PITCH to make it more advanced and enhance what previous data models have done before. So in phase 3, we partnered with the Vanderbilt Biostatistics Data Coordinating Center to develop the platform. The Coordinating Center project team took the information from the listening sessions and then was able to develop mock-ups of the interface that then we reviewed with our OR team, with our clinic team, with the data team, with the application develop team, and with leadership at KU. And together we were able to come to an idea of what exactly we wanted PITCH to look like and how it was going to work. And then once those mock-ups were approved, the team was able to develop the platform. So for phase 4, which is currently still ongoing, our staff is continuously using the platform, and we're able to provide feedback directly to the data team, and then they're able to further refine the platform. So for example, we recently said, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could see where we're doing activities in the communities? Are we extending beyond Nashville, beyond our direct county? So they're creating a heat map, and that's already in development phase. So it's happening iteratively that we're able to continue to enhance this platform. And really, all of this is possible and feasible because of our current VDRC data infrastructure. So all data collected across all of our cores, across all of our research activities, are entered into center-wide relational REDCap databases. And these databases were developed by our data core, and they're constantly and continuously managed by our data core. So to develop Pitch, these relational REDCap databases were integrated using API, and specifically softwares used Python, the Alchemy, Ruby on Rails software writing tool, and the Shiny tool. And this allows data to be pulled real time and visualized within Pitch. So Pitch is comprised of 4 primary dashboards: the outreach events and referral dashboard, the participant information and status dashboard, the internal report dashboard, and the participant study request dashboard. And I wish I could show you and have you see how great Pitch is by walking you through each of these dashboards, but I don't have time for that. So I'm just going to show you a couple highlights of outcomes we can evaluate with these dashboards. So first, this is just a snapshot of the outreach events and referral dashboard. So this is really the bread and butter of what our OR team uses on a weekly basis. And you can see there's multiple reports here, but we can use this dashboard on, like I said, a weekly basis. So an example of how we use it, our clinical core cohort began recruitment in August of 2021, and the goal was for a third of our participants to be cognitively healthy, a third to have mild impairment, and a third to have an AD diagnosis. So within that initial dashboard, we have a study status by event report, which is really like a fancy name, but all we do is we can see where did the enrolled participants in our study come from? What was the recruitment source that drew them in? So I can filter that report by any variables that I'm interested in, but including demographics or diagnosis or date. And what we see is we get pop-ups of pie charts like this. So on the right, you have our enrolled impaired participants in our clinical cohort, and on the left, you see our enrolled unimpaired participants. And we can see the recruitment source from which these participants came. So when we first ran this report, we weren't surprised to see that a lot of our impaired participants are coming from patient panels or they're coming from provider referrals, but we were surprised to see that other recruitment activities are doing equally well at generating patients, especially impaired participants. So for example, postal mailings are doing well, and then for us, we were excited to see that website traffic was high, and we know that our website traffic is directly linked to our community outreach events. So this is just one example of how we can leverage Pitch to stay on track with meeting our ongoing clinical core recruitment goals. This is an example of the participant information status dashboard, or a snapshot of it. And you can see here we have additional reports that you can click on. For example, on the second row, we have all of our registry health reports. Who's in our registry? Is it the participants that we hope would be there? Is it the participants that are going to be interesting and attractive to other ADRC affiliated research studies? So we can kind of manage all of that with this dashboard. So an example from this dashboard is the recruitment report. So this is just a snapshot in time of our recruitment activities from initial study inquiry and pre-screens, which is that light blue line, all the way to study enrollment, which is the orange line. And we can filter this by time points. So for progress reports, you can use it for that. We can also see small periods of time. If let's say we want to use a new recruitment strategy and we want to evaluate how that strategy specifically is doing with generating interest, we can look at that. And then I think importantly, not only from a recruitment perspective, but from our study team management perspective, are we moving participants through the pipeline from interest all the way to study enrollment? And not only can we use the participant information and status dashboard to evaluate recruitment, but we can also use it to identify eligible study participants. So on the left is a pop-up that generates from the study shortlisting report. And let's say, for example, you come to me and you're interested in identifying participants who are between the ages of 60 and 75. I can enter that. You're interested in identifying female participants who identify as Black or African American, who have MCI, and I can immediately fill that out, and in real time, I can generate this report that's on the left. And I can show you how many eligible participants we have that meet that criteria. Additionally, the participant information and status dashboard also aids in tracking big picture progress towards study recruitment timelines and goals. So you saw an example of this with KU's platform. We don't have 40 studies yet, but the idea is that when we want to look at this on a weekly basis, we can see how's our OR team doing at simultaneously filling multiple studies at once. And if one study is falling behind, then what do we need to do? Do we need to modify our recruitment strategies? Do we need to dedicate more staff time towards identifying patients from our registry that may be a good fit? And so we can look at all of that at once with this snapshot. And then the last dashboard I wanted to present is the participant study request dashboard. And this is where all ADRD investigators who are interested in leveraging participants from our research registry can go and complete a simple REDCap participant request form. And in that form, we just ask them to provide information on if they have IRB approval, what's the funding for their study, what are the study goals, inclusion/exclusion criteria, and study timelines. And then those forms are reviewed on a monthly basis by our ADRC Scientific Review Committee. And then once a study is approved, and they have IRB approval as well, then study investigator can access the other applications on this platform. So they can manage their staff access to pitch, they can manage their study status external report, which is going to include information on eligible participants, the ability to update participants that they've contacted, whether or not they're eligible or ineligible. They can pull reports and visual reports that they can include in their RPPRs or in any other publication-ready materials, like if they want those pie charts or anything else, they can pull that from this dashboard. And the one thing I want to highlight that's super important about this dashboard is that when an external study team uses it and they update the participants, that's happening in real time, and on our end we can see, okay, those participants were not eligible, let's find another study for them. So it really maintains accuracy of record keeping across multiple studies at once, and it makes sure that we're finding participant studies that they're eligible for and that they can enroll in. So I hope that you would agree that, in summary, that ADRD recruitment efforts will need to adapt to match the rapidly evolving pace of investment in ADRD research. This is not the first platform. We know that there are several database-driven research participant registries and platforms that exist, and they're considerably successful. We've just developed and customized our own platform to centralize participant recruitment at our institution and to track participants through the entire life cycle from initial outreach to study referral. And we truly believe that this centralized data approach to recruitment not only improves our efficiency of recruiting participants within recruitment budgets, which we all know can be tight, it also improves the effectiveness of reaching the community members that we want to reach. And if we're not reaching them, we can toggle and change our approaches to make sure that we are reaching them. It improves transparency of recruiting for our external studies who might be paying for or contributing to funding us so that we can help them recruit, so it's improving that relationship. And it's also improving accountability to our study participants who want to participate in studies, as well as the communities that we intend to serve. So the development and implementation of pitch truly represents a significant advancement in ADRD research participant recruitment and management. And with that, I'd love to thank our team at the Vanderbilt Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, as well as the team at KU who really inspired and mentored us through the development of our platform. Thank you.
Okay, now we are going to be having a panel Q&A, so I'd like to welcome back to the stage Drs. Lutz, Lewandowski, Burns, and Jimenez-Majora. We do have a virtual question or two to kick things off, if that would be okay too.
Okay, let's go to the online question first.
Yes. Okay, so the first question is for our most recent presenter, Dr. Kelsey Full. Do you have a GitHub repository for any of the work you are doing with the participant dashboard?
Yes, we do. I'm looking at our data core lead because that would be a great answer for her, but yes.
All right. And then is there any way that folks can find that?
Yes, I'll circle back on that one.
Okay. Yeah, if your data core lead wants to come up to the Q&A mic too, we can.
Dan.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I'm talking to somebody else.
Yes. So can you tell folks where to find the GitHub repository for the work you are doing with the participant dashboard?
The hub work actually is held internally in GitLab within VUMC. Right now, it's not shared with the public. And actually, the entire web base was built not only rely on GitHub, but it's actually multiple platforms. So there's also involved multiple Python-based and R Shiny app stuff. So, I mean, I'm happy to take further questions with follow-up emails. You can search my name online.
Great, thank you. We also have a couple of questions for Dr. Lewandowski. The first of which is your team using the custom-built CRM in REDCap to handle subject scheduling notifications and communications?
No, we don't use, our team doesn't enroll participants in their studies. We pass them off to the study teams, and the study teams set up those appointments and they manage that communications. But sometimes the study teams will go on ahead and put in the notes for a particular participant when they have a meeting coming up with them or a visit. And that's really helpful for our team because, as we know, one time a person learns a phone number, they don't learn new ones. And so oftentimes we are their central number they're calling. And so if we have that information from the study team, we can just tell them, oh yeah, your appointment's tomorrow at noon. They can't wait to see you. So we're able to communicate back and forth that way, but not all of our teams do that.
Great. And then following up to, are you collecting participant feedback in a standardized way?
What?
Participant feedback, are you collecting that in a standardized way?
Not at this time. That's something that we want to deploy, especially when a participant is finished with a study. We're looking at an end-of-study process to survey them and to talk to them. Anecdotally, we collect that information and talk to people. One of the things that we really want to focus on when it comes to feedback is why people don't participate in studies. And so we do record that, but we'd like to learn a little more about, their decision-making process for particular studies.
Yeah, one of my questions was already answered. My other question is for both Dr. Burns and for Dr. Full. Did you evaluate Ripple Signs, which is like a commercial product for customer relation management? And if you did, what were the pluses and minuses of your decision to make a custom in-house solution versus buying an off-the-shelf product?
Yeah, so the question is, did we evaluate like CRM systems?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yes, we did. We gave it a lot of thought, and it was a while ago, but they're very expensive.
Yeah.
They look fantastic, but they're very expensive, and they still take a lot of work to sort of massage into the system you want, and that's continual work. I think Emory has Salesforce, so. And I know the experience, I think, for them is great, but it takes a lot of work. And so I guess we chose it this way, partly because of those factors, but also the flexibility with building things around REDCap is very flexible and adaptable, and we're all using it and interacting with it. So that was a big advantage. And then learning the Shiny apps and things like that, reporting. So I guess in the end, flexibility and cost is what led us down the path of using REDCap.
Hi. Oh, you have another question?
No, I was asking Dr. Flo if you had anything to add to.
Well, I will say that Dr. Vidoni and the KU team were really inspired what we did. So I think we just kind of built off of their approach. But REDCap is based at Vanderbilt and was developed there. So it's kind of our tendency to lean towards using REDCap. And it allows us to do data collection. We can, you can integrate all of your different REDCap databases beyond just the customer management part of it. So it was a good fit.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Hank Paulson. I have a question for Dr. Lewandowski, but first I want to say these were all fantastic talks, very inspiring, really doing a great job of allowing us to integrate what we do as centers. You mentioned monetizing OR services. I love that idea. Tell me more about that.
My director of finance loves it too. So what we do is when we have a PI who's interested in a study, they fill out a resource request and they talk to me and our team, and we take a look at what does the study look like. So what's the inclusion-exclusion criteria? What are we asking people to do? How complicated is it? Do we have people already in our system? And what engagement things are we going to have to deploy, and how expensive are those going to be? And then I put together a projected estimation of cost for that PI. And then they build that into their request for funds. And then we have a series of other meetings where we learn about the study and we develop an engagement plan, and we put all of our cheat sheets in to learn about the study so that when we're talking with people, we can go through inclusion-exclusion criteria really quickly. And we set up all of the reports. And then each quarter, I invoice for all of our time. So we have those two teams. We have an engagement team, which gets people really excited about participating in research, and then we have that recruitment team that actually talks to people about participating in the research studies. And so we invoice based off hours of time, and then we invoice based off of the amount of people we pass to the study. And I give that to the PIs each quarter. And then also, if there are other things that cost, like printing flyers or the social media campaigns, the cost for that, I have their work tags and we charge for that.
I'll just add on, it's really important to meet with the investigators early so that, they're aware they're going to get a cost, and everyone under budget's recruitment. So that's a culture change, I think, that we've been pushing, is making sure that recruitment is prioritized. And that means money. So do we cover all the costs of OR? No, but it's a commitment to doing it and doing it right, and then figuring out how to pay for it later. And we're doing pretty well, I'd say.
So before we take any more questions, I really want to take the liberty to ask a question specifically for Gustavo. So it's about AI. I know many of us are interested in this. So I know you mentioned that the development of AI-enabled tools for data exploration and using LLM model and analysis, right, which is really cool features now. But can you elaborate a little bit more how these AI tools can enhance the data usability for clinical trial data set you already have, and maybe in the future you'll put in? So, and what kind of challenges do you anticipate in implementing those LLM and AI tools across this large and diverse research network?
Thank you. So obviously, as I said, this is an early prototype. I think we are very focused on making sure that the approach that we're using is responsible. We want to make sure that the approach that we take isolates the data that's being used to power that kind of approach. And I think for some of our future studies, we have sites that are outside of the US. And so we're also starting to think about, what are the issues related to the use of AI, especially for participant data that is collected outside of the US. So these are all, I think, important regulatory issues that, we're thinking about, and we've been engaging with colleagues about how best to approach those issues. I think on a more positive note, I think that there is a tremendous potential to leverage these approaches, again, as a launch pad or as a starting point, especially for early career investigators who are just getting familiar with these data sets. These data sets are complex, they're multimodal, and as I said, we are planning to release more of these different types of data. And so we see this kind of AI-based approach as a way to lower the barriers to usability for these data sets and hopefully maximize the utility of these data. Again, these data sets required a very significant investment from NIA as well as from our private sector partners, from philanthropic organizations. And so we really want to make sure that to the extent possible, the science that can be generated from these data sets is maximized, it's meaningful, and ultimately that we can use these data not just for our own purposes within the consortium, but also more broadly.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, Debbie Zemlock, Northwestern ADRC. Thank you guys so much for these presentations. I really appreciate the concerted focus on recruitment data management here. It's very exciting to see. I have 1,000,001 questions, and I'll probably find you guys afterwards to ask a few more. But I'll filter it down to just one. Can you maybe both go through kind of what your touch points are with your staff, are from the start to finish of recruitment? What systems are your staff using? How are they logging their communication with participants? How are they logging that scheduling? And then that's for like recruitment staff. And then for your data staff, what are their touch points with this system? How often are they going in and running these scripts that are generating these dashboards? So just kind of the staff effort on this.
Sure. So everything that happens for all of our staff is in REDCap, in different REDCap databases. So when we have a pre-screen, it's a REDCap form that's filled out. So that's the initial touch point. Let's say you call, you're interested, we get you on the phone, we do the pre-screen. Then we would schedule the study enrollment. That happens in a different REDCap database. So all of it's happening, and then we can filter all of those touch points, and we can look at time from inquiry to our first enrollment call. We can look at time from inquiry to study enrollment. So that's a really valuable resource for us as far as managing all of it in REDCap and then being relational. And then our data collection staff also use different REDCap databases. So it's all happening, but in unique REDCap databases that are then pulled. The data is being pulled continuously, and so there's no real script running. It's just kind of happening on the back end, if that makes sense. So they're available in real time, which is the most beautiful thing about it. So if you enter something in your staff, I can see it when I open Pitch.
So we have an entire engagement plan that we develop for each of our studies that we're promoting, and we measure all of those different engagement activities that we have going on, and we use a variety of systems as well as REDCap to do that. But ultimately, REDCap captures how people come to us and how they are interested in us. Sometimes the person can just put it in, but we have other links and other things built in to where it just fills it in for them and they don't have to. So that's how we're able to measure a lot of those touch points and communications. We also, our team logs all of their time talking to participants, all of the emails, everything, all of that is logged. And so then we've been able to take a look at that to then see how many additional points we need to add in, which has been effective. And we can see how many minutes our team is on the phone each month, each year, et cetera.
Brief follow-up. Do you have any pushback, or do you see extra burden from all of that logging that's already a lot of effort to reach out to these participants, but then the additional effort to log all of it as well?
No, it's been really helpful for them. They like to know too, and they get excited. So every Monday morning, we talk about our numbers, and if you're above 42%, like we had a person last week, I think she was at 62, 63%. We're like, wow, and she's all excited. So it's been nice. They like to see it too. They also like being able to measure those engagement efforts and see how effective that they are, and they like to measure them on the back end because we don't want to flood. So we want to make sure we're getting the right people contacting us and not a whole bunch of people who don't qualify for studies. So they're willing to put in the time and effort to make sure that we're strategically reaching the people we need to reach for studies.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And I have a really good team. Like, they're just great.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Jamie Noble, the clinical core leader for the Columbia site. In my role, we liaise with all of the other cores, especially the outreach core, our neuropath, our data cores, all for trying to have kind of all these integrated, systems and data streams. And what I'm hearing through your presentations is that we have, shared problems but different solutions. And I would encourage us to find a way so that we have a shared solution, right? We have the UDS because we were all doing neuropsych and neurological evaluations differently. That unified that. We now have a singular platform for imaging. I would suggest that we need a singular platform for, and this is unpopular, I'm sure, but consent. We need a singular platform when it comes to outreach and engagement and tracking. These are all the same problems that would be much more efficiently done one system at a time. We have resorted to using REDCap as well, not because I'm a Vanderbilt graduate myself, but because it's a good system. But even that has the opportunity for sharing your platform with other centers. Like, what's the barrier for us doing that now, rather than spending, it's been a long, long road trying to get us to the point of getting our systems efficient. It's great to hear that other systems are doing it. Why aren't we launching that as kind of a shared platform? Or something like it.
No. So I think that's definitely one approach. I would say that the alternative would be interoperable systems, so not necessarily requiring that every group uses exactly the same systems, but making sure that the systems can communicate with each other in a straightforward manner.
I agree. I was thinking about the FAIR principles that were there for your data sharing.
Correct.
We don't have that when it comes to outreach. And that seems like a mistake, especially we spent a lot of yesterday and a lot of our days otherwise thinking about outreach and recruitment. To have that kind of as the last thing that we do, that shit really needs to be first. We have solutions that have been proposed. What can we do to make them more uniformly available?
Yeah, I think also some of the NAC presentations with some of the new portals and new integration, sitting through this meeting, I'm thinking like some of what we're doing eventually is just going to be the staging area to get the data quality there and ready to go to NAC, and the integration pieces, and that will be done through some of these great new portals.
Okay, please.
My name is Emily Little. I'm the administrator from UCSD. We've also spent quite a bit of time working on a platform lately and realized that there was some importance to treating the clinical core participants that are very well characterized a little bit differently than our registry participants. So I'm just wondering in your systems how, if you allow access to your affiliated investigators to all of your well characterized clinical core participants, how you track participant burden, and or if you have some other system for limiting who gets those referrals.
We are a relatively new ADRC, so this is a question that I think we're going to have to face in the future. Right now, we try to only have clinical core participants that we feel are the best fit for other studies. We also only have, I think, maybe 7 affiliated studies right now. So it's kind of, we're at the very beginning, which is the benefit that we've developed a platform at this point, because we don't have to go back and integrate it later. But I think it is something that we definitely are going to have to keep in mind. And in the ORCOR session this morning, we talked a lot about that. So it's a great point and something I think we need to integrate. Thank you.
Please.
Hi, Sophia Wong. I'm the exiting ORCOR steering committee. So I think it's great that we're doing a lot of the data-driven stuff. We've done the same thing at IU and found that really helpful. I want to answer Jamie's question about the need for transparency and data sharing. I think that's critical. I think it's not just interoperability of the systems. It's also wide variation, though, in ORCOR staffing. We have had extensive conversations in the ORCOR steering committee when I was chair last year. The FTE for ORCORs varies anywhere from 0.5, maybe, to 4.0 FTE. So I think it's really great that we want this. And I think the question is, what will be the thought process to get consistency, right? If you have a data core, you should expect, right, a data core leader, a co-leader, data manager, and a biostatistician. But space, like only half of the data cores had a data manager. Like you would get a lot of differences in implementation. So if you want to see us implement those things, I think we also need to make sure there's consistency of those resources. The other second challenge in getting the REDCap is that in the conversation with all the centers, because the affiliated studies vary so widely in their standardized operating procedures, right? Like we have like auto alerts that tells us when we need to like remember to make that call. So I think that would be the other key thing is localization, Jamie, versus what we want to harmonize. And I don't know if we've had as much of those conversations, but I think this would be a great starting point to begin to have those, as we do want to share what are the best recruitment practices.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, last question. Yeah.
Last question. I'm from that news center, so we don't have any of this yet. And so it's really exciting to hear about all of these wonderful things that maybe we could implement right now when we're just starting. So I've heard lots of different ideas. I don't know which one would be the best for us to choose. And what I'm most interested in is how do you go from the very beginning at the ORE, or however you pronounce it, your outreach, all the way to the autopsy room and the brain that I'm looking at. And can we integrate all of that information from top to bottom? And that's an open question for anybody.
I will say that Pitch is just a part of our larger VMAC data platform. So we have a vmacdata.org where if someone's interested in doing research, they can apply and they can see all of our data from, you know, cognitive to autopsy and all of that. So I think we are trying, I don't know the right answer, but I think we are trying to have multiple data platforms that work together so it is kind of a one-stop shop from recruitment all the way to data sharing.
And the one thing I didn't hear anybody talk about is how this integrates with what's in your consent form, because what you share is very limited by what's in your consent form. And how do you manage varied sharing when you have different agreements, which is what we have, because our Native American people don't want us doing any genetic stuff, and it's very difficult to get them to sign off on that. So we have to keep the APOE whatever somewhere separate. So I don't know how you're dealing with that.
Well, for us, people consent to be in our database, and it's just a verbal consent or assent for them to come into our database. Then each specific study consents the individual to that study. So if we were talking to a person who maybe wasn't comfortable about providing their DNA or something along those lines, we wouldn't offer that study to them. We would try to find a different study for them because we don't want them to feel uncomfortable. We don't want a study team to invest time in bringing somebody in for them not to want to be in the study. So that's where we work really hard to make sure we have that match before they get to that piece.
All right.
I would say maybe just from a higher level perspective, you know, one of the things that we've been talking about is building linkages between cohort data and trial data. And so some of the initiatives that were discussed during the meeting, such as the NAC ID or the GUID, other initiatives that NIA has been leading are opportunities for us to be able to build linkages across observational cohorts, trial data, and potentially EHR data, other types of data. So I think maybe doesn't answer exactly your question, but that's I think an overall approach to be able to link data, you know, really in a very comprehensive way.
All right, thank you everyone. Let's give a round of applause to our excellent speakers. Thank you.